Welcome, everybody, to a sad episode of the PodAskew Podcast, and I wouldn't even use the word episode. We're here very briefly to talk about something that's happened, but first, with me, as always, is my heterotic mate, Rico. What's up, buddy?
As you said, it's a sad one. So I'm here, you're here. How's it going? I'm here.
And then also with us today, because he can speak more about what's going on, our great friend, Midnight Smoke. What's going on, Smoke?
Evening, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Surprised. I'll say that. Yeah. I mean, so let me fill everybody in what's going on. So and Smoke, if I say something wrong or whatever, please jump in and correct me. Don't hesitate to do that. But an original SmodSquad member, if I understand it, Scott passed away today. Unfortunately, as of right now, we don't know the cause of death, unfortunately. However, that makes it no less tragic. And because he is an original SmodSquad guy, even though Rico and I weren't directly connected with him, we thought that it would be a good moment to pay homage to him and the entire squad, because, you know, I can't speak for Rico. I don't feel like we're in yet. I feel like we're just sitting on the outside, but we're there. We're getting there,
dude.
We're the creepers that are like outside the window. Like, let me in. It's cold.
Hey, well, listen, we can't do this without a little bit of fun. It wouldn't be PodAskew. But
right.
But yeah, so Scott was, if I understand it, the host of a show called That Man on Fat Man, which was basically an all-you-can everything about Kevin Smith type podcast. Like, people think that's what our show is, and it's really not. We're more just inspired by and use that. But Scott, from what I understand, was, you know, to use Kev's terms, balls deep in Kevin mythology, you know. Dude, so
he was up in his taint, man. Yeah. He was up there.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Like I said, and Smoke, I'll stop talking in a second, but you knew this guy way better than we ever did. I think he wouldn't want us to not make some jokes like that, especially, you know. So, but fill us in. Tell us a little bit about Scott.
Scott Holden, he was a good guy, man. I mean, he obviously a huge Kevin Smith fan, bigger than me, no joke. He went to as many things as he could, all the length he went to get an interview with Kevin. Luckily, I mean, he was able to towards the end with Hitchbot. He was actually, if you guys haven't checked it out, I know Kevin retweeted something, I think it was yesterday or
today.
It was today. I think it's today. Oh, yeah. About the Hitchbot episode. And it's a really good episode.
Real quick, you know that generates in Philly, right? The Hitchbot thing? Like the Preston Steve show that I listened to and have referenced on this show a couple times. So it was pretty cool to see that whole, like, full circle thing. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, how it connects is really neat. And, I knew Scott through Kevin Smith's podcast, Edumacation, things like that, because, again, I was one of the few that started writing in a lot at the beginning, along with Big Daddy Jimmy V, Storm Raven. There's so many, Driscoll. Like, there's so many of us, and we all got really close. And then Scott and his then wife wanted to do a documentary on podcasting, because it was huge at that time. Like, this is a couple years ago. It was really getting big. Kevin was starting to really spread out more. And Scott thought it was a great idea with all these documentaries coming out. Let's do a documentary on podcasting. We'll call it What's a Podcast? And we'll go through and we'll interview other podcasters, other shows, all the way up to the big man himself, Kevin, you know? And they got a lot of recording done. At one point, because we were all pretty close, we all had our own shows. The Mr. BS show was the one I was a part of, and we all started Why Not Con. And the first year we did it was in Vegas.
You've mentioned that before,
Yeah, and Scott and Gene, they came from the That Man on Fat Man podcast. It was before it became That Man Beyond. And they came with all the recording equipment, and then we had Afterburn there, we had the BS show, we had Faces and Aces, we had OC there. There was so many people all in this one mansion, man. We rented out, and we just got to know each other really well. Scott and Gene were just recording, like we'd do a show, and they'd be recording us doing shows, like all around. We did a giant show. And as far as I know, it didn't get too much further after all the interviews. There was a ton of editing. I got to see a lot of really good footage in Canada and stuff.
Cool.
But I know it stopped there as far as I know from the documentary part. But his aspirations for the podcast and his love for it was insane. Like he would be a guest on anybody's podcast. He would bring anybody on to just like, let's just bullshit for an hour and see what comes up. I mean, he was huge into this whole medium and he loved it. You can tell. Like his studio in his house, I was lucky enough to be able to actually go to his house after a meetup in Philly. After seeing Kevin, them, and a bunch of my old crew, he invited me to his home. Him and his wife and his kids were there, and we got to do a show right there. And that's when he took my PodAskew hockey jersey, my Golgothans one. He took it that night for me. And the next day, they went to New York City to see Kev and Ralph. Kev signed it, and that's the picture that's on my Twitter of Kevin and Ralph holding my jersey. Yeah. Scott did that for me.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, like, he was a good guy. Meeting him on Twitter was one of the best things. And then the first time I actually met him face-to-face was here in Niagara Falls. Dude was like, hey, I'm going to be out in your area. I'm going to be in Toronto interviewing these guys about this PodAskew Street Hockey League that Kevin started up in Canada.
I think we've heard of that before a little bit.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was awesome. So I was like, dude, Falls are not that far from you. I can be there in like 20 minutes, man. So ended up meeting there. I get across the border, and that's where I met Dave Mader, who was one of the founders of the PodAskew Street Hockey League, which got me into it. And then eventually I became a captain and met hundreds of other people through what Scott started, just saying, hey, let's meet up. Hey, I'm going to interview this guy. How about you hang out with us while we just bullshit today? All right, cool. And then we all just smoked and fucking chilled, and it was amazing, man. He was really good about bringing other people together through the podcast. It was really nice.
It's a shame that we, meaning Rico and I, didn't get an opportunity to get to talk to this guy, because it sounds like someone that we would have not only gotten along with, but we would have had that mutual passion. So we would have been able to commiserate as you do and as Chris does. I mean, all the people you already mentioned. I mean, even Cat Ears to a lesser degree, because she doesn't podcast like we do, but that's not, it's just a thing. But
the Kev thing, the love. Right, like you could bring up anything about Kevin and he would be like, bam, oh, you mean this episode of this podcast? And then you would go into like a conversation about that, or you go into the movies. Like, I can't remember. Oh God, we talked about Clerks because that was the first movie I saw. I saw it like in the beginning of '95. Somehow my buddy got a version of it in '95, and because we were huge movie buffs, I love black and white movies. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this," and he showed it to me. And that was my story. I learned that way, and his was pretty good from what I remember. But we would go back and just talk about Clerks, man. Like the original, like that's the OG. That's the one he started with, the one I started with, and that was cool. We had that little connection there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I Smoke. I'll follow your lead on this, but I know he had some personal things that took place in the last year that was shared to me. By the way, Jay is incredibly upset about this. Our correspondent, she's pretty broken up about this, and she was the one that filled me in on it, honestly, because it was like way over my head. So thank you to Jay for bringing this to our radar so that we could, because I hit up you. It was like, Smoke, I don't know what's going. A, I don't know what's going on, but B, I know you're connected, and I'm sorry. Come talk with us. So.
That was weird. I found out this morning. Like, I didn't know that because obviously I was out last night here doing stuff. But I actually got a message from Dave Mader, the guy in Canada, this morning. Okay. He's the one who messaged me. He's like, hey, I just let you know. I mean, I got to let you know in case you didn't find out. Like, we met through him. We became friends through Scott. Right. I want to make sure you know because I'm not on Facebook. And that's, I guess, how he found out. And I was like, oh, fuck.
I saw it through Twitter. But, yeah, I'm sure anyone that's following Kev or is part of this, circle is putting it wherever they can. Facebook. Yeah, it's all over. So, I don't really have a whole lot more I can say because, again, unfortunately, I didn't get to know the guy. And that really upsets me, too, because it sounds like he's right from, like, around the corner from me. So it's a shame I couldn't pull that off. But
here's what I can say. There was a few episodes on the Mr. BS show that we had him on. I don't know which ones they are, but they are live on SoundCloud. Again, we put the whole catalog back up of our old show. He's on a few of those. Look for those in the description. Look up for That Man Beyond. I believe his SoundCloud and his stuff is still up. And Edumacation, the early episodes. I'm on a couple. He's on a lot, man. Go check that shit out.
I remember those episodes.
He was a huge fan.
That's why when I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but that's why when because the first time you and I met was through Chris Kim.
Yep.
And when he connected you and I already knew who you were because I'd heard Edumacation, you know. I'm like, wait, because it took me a minute, and then I asked him, is it that the same Smoke? And he's like, yep. I'm like, I know that guy, you know. So yeah, and now here we are, 18 months later, and we're all friends, which I love. But
it's crazy. I love it.
Yeah, me too, man. And you know, but yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes here and give some love to an OG SmodSquad member and put that out there. I don't think it would be right if Rico and I didn't. So Rico, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, because there's not a whole lot we can add, but
there's really not a lot I can add. The only thing that I could think of is based on the photos I've seen of him is I think I may have seen him when I went and saw Hollywood Babylon, but it may not be him. But it looks like it could be him, so I don't know.
It's possible.
It's possible.
You went out there a lot, so it's a very good chance.
Well, I mean, this was out in my neck of the woods. This is in Cali, so if he ever traveled all the way for a Babylon, but it's definitely possible. But regardless, it sounds like, as our podfather would say, huge bucket of wind.
Yeah.
No, most definitely. But yeah, if anybody gets a chance, check out what he did. I know he had that documentary. It was supposed to be called What's a Podcast? If it ever does come out or any part of it sees the light of day, check it out. It's really cool. There's a lot of us in it that, I mean, I don't even think I'm visually in there. I could be. I can't remember. The cut I saw, it wasn't, but I don't care. Check it out.
You don't remember what happened an hour ago. I mean, let's be real about it.
Yeah, that's true. But I just want to say, dude, like, seriously, Scott Holden, he did what I love about podcasting. He was able to bring other people together, to be able to create more friendships that you would not have otherwise. So for him, I packed in here some special weed that I've been holding on to for a while. And
you've been holding on to?
I have been holding on to. So I'm going to hit that for Scott real quick.
Please.
Cheers, buddy.